Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Freedom Deals Live. So we haven't done one of these before. We're going to go through a site that is being sold DA approved. So for those of you that haven't joined a Freedom Deals Live session before, what I do in each of these sessions is we actually look at deals that I've either done in the past, am negotiating on currently, or are deals that I have live at the moment. So these aren't hypothetical situations. These aren't made up situations. These are real properties. These are real negotiations, and these are real due diligence sessions. Sometimes I may not have even done the session before I actually join online with you. So you're literally going through it with me for the first time. So this one's just popped up recently, and I thought it'd be an interesting one to take you through because I think there's a lot of misconceptions in the industry as to what it actually means to have a DA approved site. And I mean that in a number of different ways, as in, number one, if you were to buy a site, is it worth getting a DA on it and flicking it? Does that work? And while I keep talking, let's just get that in the comments as to, do you think that's worthwhile doing? Is that a strategy worthwhile doing? Buying a 1 into 2, 1 into 3, 1 into 4, 5, whatever it is, getting a DA on it and then selling it. Do you think that's a worthwhile exercise? Do you think that there would be enough profit in it? Just take a stab and let me know your thoughts in the comments. So that's question one. Number two is it de-risking a site by buying it DA approved? I'll say it again. Is it de-risking the site by buying it DA approved? Let's get your thoughts on that in the comments as well. So thanks, Evelyn. Seeing your comment there. Depends on the feasibility. Yeah, and look, that's always true. Yep, always true. It depends on the numbers. And Mick, yep, if it pays. So really the question is, does it pay? And the answer might surprise you in that it's definitely market dependent. But hey, Roland, thanks. It's definitely market dependent, but generally speaking, if we were talking a flat market, getting a DA on a 1 into 2, probably, look, I don't know where I'd draw a line in the sand, but on the smaller scale developments, getting a DA and selling it on rarely adds much value. It basically saves the next buyer a little bit of holding costs. That's about it. Now, why is that the case? Well, number one, the level of certainty around small developments is pretty high as it is. So in terms of if you've got an 800 square meter block and the zoning allows for 2 400 square meter blocks, it's pretty certain what the outcome is. So buying a DA approved isn't really de-risking it by much because it was pretty much a lay down to Z. You could get the 1 into 2 anyway. So really all you've done is save the buyer a few months in holding costs. So there's arguably a little bit of value there, but it's not huge. It's a different story when you're talking significantly larger sites where the DA process might take years, or when there is a lot more question around the complexity of the site. So the more complex the site gets, the more uncertainty there is about the yield of the site. Is it going to be 50 lots? Is it going to be 100 lots? Is it going to be 20 lots? So getting a DA in those circumstances increases the certainty, removes those questions that people need to budget for. So then, if they don't have answers to those questions, and recently we did one on Elva Street in Caboolture, which I told you I'd keep you posted on. In the end, I crashed the contract. And the reason being was there was questions we needed to answer. We had to get answers to those questions. It was going to make a massive difference to what we could pay for it. And if we couldn't get certainty on those questions, then we had to go with the worst case scenario and bid with that price. So, it's a very silly decision that the vendors have made twice now, I might add. First developer came back to them and said, look, we need more time. We need to go through these investigations. They canned the contract on them. I was the second developer that did the same thing. I presume the third one will do the same thing. So it's either you allow developers to get that certainty or you give it to them by getting a DA yourself. So in those circumstances where the site is more complex, there can be an argument, even on the smaller ones, that getting a DA approval is worthwhile. But generally speaking, smaller sites, getting a DA approval, not going to add massive amounts of value. When might it make sense to sell a site DA approved? If the market is running super hot. If the market is running super, super hot and arguably getting overheated, and the site has gone up in so much value since you bought it and went through the DA process that you can now exit for a handsome profit without even constructing. Removing construction de-risks the project. So then it can be really worth selling DA approved. And I'll give you some examples of in 2021 and 2022, when the market was going absolutely ballistic. I know people that bought sites in 2020, bigger sites, might have been 20, 30, 50 lot subdivisions. They bought them in 2020 when the market was seriously subdued. They went through the DA process, and with the bigger sites too, what people really want to see too is operational works. They went through the operational works process as well in most cases. Why? Because the operational works process on larger sites is going to give you a much better indication of what it's going to cost to develop. Without operational works approval, so knowing what kind of fill needs to be done, knowing what kind of pavement design needs to be done for the road, knowing how much retaining needs to be done, all those sorts of things, that tells you what it's going to cost to develop. If you don't have the answer to that, you've got to guess, which means you've got to allow a lot more contingency. But they literally bought sites in 2020, sold them in 2021 or early 2022, but most of them about a year later in 2021 when the market had gone ballistic. And they made more profit on those sites than they had originally estimated they would make in their feasibility by developing it. And all they did was put a DA and OpsWorks approval on it and then on-sell it. And that proved to be a very, very good decision, because had they have held and constructed, then they would have been selling into 2022 when the market tanked. Didn't tank, but it got much more difficult to sell stuff. So in those cases, when the market is just screaming hot, there can be a good strategy to exit DA approved. But yeah, generally speaking, rule of thumb for small developments, DA approval doesn't add a huge amount of value. So on that note, let's have a look at this one. Kind of spoiled a little bit of the story there, but not all of it. So this is the site we are looking at here. Now, it is quite a large parcel, but this is a good example. And I think them getting the DA on this one was a smart move. Reason being is there's a lot at play on it. And if we have a look at the engineering, you'll see why. So notice the green haze here is koala habitat. See if I can zoom in a bit more. So we've got core koala habitat, and you've got medium risk flood hazard, and you've got high risk flood hazard. So basically all of these areas at the back here can't build on it, can't do anything with it. All of that land is unusable. And in this case, when you look at the DA, you actually lose it. It's not even a part of the blocks. So in some situations, they'll leave it as part of the blocks, but it's not usable land, but they still get to own it. So there's some benefit to the landowner. In this situation here, for whatever reason, in this approval, all of this land here is actually getting effectively donated to council, mainly because of the koala habitat, I would guess, and also the fact that the big flood hazard. But so of this pretty significant size of land, you've lost half of it. So literally only half of it was actually developable. So when they were looking at this originally, it would have been pretty obvious. And if they had tried to sell this without a DA, it would have been pretty obvious to everyone going, wow, really have no idea what's going to be allowed here. Are they going to allow anything here? So for this site, it was definitely a smart move for them to get a DA on it, to remove that question. So at least now people are going, all right, we know what we're bidding on. We know we're bidding on a 1:3. They haven't done OpsWorks. And I'll be honest, I haven't read the DA conditions on it yet to see if they're actually dictating that operational works is required. Because you see here, these dotted lines, the contours. So this block here actually has, what have we got? 14, 13 and a half, 13. So you've got 1 meter of fall from there to there, and then it falls away quite significantly. So now this is quite a large block. It's about 900 square meters. So you still have quite a decent pad up here. But there's a possibility they may not allow them to do retaining and filling there, potentially for ecological reasons, koala habitat at the back here and all those sorts of things. So my guess is that this block just has to stay how it is, which is okay given its size, but as long as you factor that into your pricing when you estimate what you can sell it for. So what do you see on this design? What do you think? What could be the challenges? What do you think the benefits are? How would you market this to the market? How would you position it? Who would be your target audience? And just from what you're looking at on the design there, What stands out to you? Just let me know what you're thinking. I know a number of you have been doing this for a while now, so let's just see how that thought process is maturing. What's coming up for you. And actually, what I'll do as well, so give you a second to look at all that. Have a look at the legend over here. This explains what everything is. You've got your proposed sewer main, proposed water main, proposed house service, proposed water service conduits. We've got existing overhead electricity, existing stormwater drainage. Can't tell you what that is. Now, what I'm also going to do, so feel free to start throwing in the comments your thoughts and observations already, but now I'll take you through the services as well. So, all right, so NBN, we have NBN in the street. There's an existing property connection. Telstra we don't care about because there's NBN. Stormwater, nothing relevant to us other than the fact that there is a river behind, which is an appropriate legal point of discharge. Sewer and water, as we know, they can often be the challenge. So now this is something we haven't come across in these sessions before is, okay, so you've got your sewer, your reticulation mains, your manholes, this network out here, which is a bit all over the shop in this street. And then you also got this dashed line across here, which if you look over at the legend, you've got trunk main, reticulation main, overflow main. So that is an overflow main, but it is still sewer. Roland, can't really see the details. It's too blurry. Okay, fair enough. I'm guessing you're meaning that original plan. I'll zoom back in again when I get it back over there. But look, just from what you're seeing, let me know your thoughts in terms of what are you seeing in terms of positives. What are the good things you're seeing about the servicing and the design? What are the challenges you're seeing with the services and the design? Is there anything coming up as a red flag you don't think it can be serviced or it's going to be really expensive to do? Let's get it in the comments, guys. What are you seeing? What do you think? Okay, let's have a look. Oh, we don't care about that one. All right, now in the other plan, it did show that there was overhead power, but given the fact that we're doing a driveway to the back, I think you all know what that means for the power. So awfully quiet in the comments. I'm going to wait till we get a bit of contribution in the comments. I'll just keep flicking through the services. Let's see what you come up with, guys. All right, now I'll take you back to the engineering. Okay, so curiously, not all my comments are appearing in your stream. That is interesting and that is curious. And they take ages to appear. Also interesting. Okay. All right. So I haven't had any comments come through about servicing and all that sort of stuff yet. So yeah, if you have put those on and they haven't displayed, then by all means, please pop them in again. Yeah, there does appear to be a lag. I don't know why that is. I think that's because it's an external software which is then managing its relationship with YouTube and other platforms. Okay, so we're back here. So again, you've got your core habitat, your flooding. You've got a concrete driveway access way. Have a think about what this means again. So we've talked about this council before. Remember, different councils have different ways that they deal with access ways and how many blocks can come off those access ways. All right. I don't think we need to focus on those too much. There's your swept paths for basically just showing that the cars can turn around. Okay, so given that it may just be that there's a delay in the comments coming through, I'm going to start kicking off on this. Number one is we've got a big concrete driveway. Concrete's expensive. No way getting around that. And as soon as we are doing rear access, no matter what the situation is with the electricity at the street, that now means design and construction for the electricity. So that obviously adds a cost because we need to build it and we need to get an engineer to design it. Pardon me. So in this situation here, that's probably a difference of 20 to 30,000 rather than just being able to do overhead connections. Now, in this particular council, we've talked about in the past what their ruling is on rear access driveways and the fact that they only allow one house or one dwelling per rear access driveway unless it is a part of a community title scheme. What does that mean? Basically, it means that this becomes a shared asset. The driveway becomes a shared asset. There is a body corporate. So there is a sinking fund that they all need to contribute to. Relative to townhouses and those sorts of things, it's very small, but it's the council's way of making sure that that driveway and any other shared assets are going to be looked after and that there are not going to be any... Can I show the new plan, please? The new plan. Is this the one you're referring to here? So that's their way of making sure the facilities are going to be looked after, and it's there's not going to be issues in the future of arguments between neighbours as to who's maintaining what and who needs to pay for it. Okay, so concrete driveway is one thing. Community title scheme is another thing. All right, water seems pretty straightforward in this design. You've got your water coming down in here, and sewer is this black line coming through the back here and then back across, and looks like we will be building a manhole, which is pretty typical when you do a new extension of a main off the sewer. Typically, you need to build a manhole. So manholes, not cheap. Throw a number of it about 20 grand. But if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. So that's what we're looking at servicing wise. Is key point is it looks like it's serviceable, and they had to prove that it was serviceable for the DA. Then it's just a question of cost. Now, one of the other things with buying DA approved sites, what you need to ask yourself the question of is, why are they selling it DA approved? If it's a cracking site, why? If the site is so good and it's so profitable, why are they selling it? Now, I just explained to you why you might choose to sell a DA approved site. So that is a potential option. Some people don't really want to do the DA process, but they've just discovered that there was too much uncertainty around their site. So they thought, all right, well, to get top dollar, we better go through the DA to answer all those questions. Fair enough. However, there's plenty of other times where sites get sold DA approved because people buy them, get the DA on it, and then discover they can't do anywhere near as much with it as they thought, or it's going to cost way more to develop than they thought. And they go, bad investment. Should I just get out at the best I can, or should I sink more into this bad investment? So you need to go into it with that mindset of scrutinizing this, going, why is this person getting out? If it's a good deal, why are they getting out? One of the other reasons why selling DA approved doesn't add so much value to small scale developments is the transactional costs are so significant relative to the value of the development. If you're talking a $10 million or $20 million purchase and it's going to be 200 lots, you go and get DA approval, it's added a fair bit of value to it. And yes, there's going to be some costs of transactions, but relative to the value of the development, it's quite small. Whereas when you're talking a development that you're buying for $1 million or $2 million, and then you've got $100,000 or $200,000 of additional costs just to transact it in terms of agents, comms, stamp duty, and all these other things, and then the holding costs for the next person to take on, a whole lot of that value gets eaten up just in the fact that it's getting passed to the next party. So that's one of the other things. So what I'm looking at here is, I'm like, why are they selling it? Is there something that stinks about this? Is there a red flag? Is there somewhere where they've discovered, oh my God, this thing is going to be so expensive to develop? And an example being is one of the sites I'm dealing with at the moment, which I think I've mentioned to you, is where one sewer connection is potentially going to cost $150,000. Didn't see that coming. So these things do happen every now and then where these sites just have something that you don't know until you get into it. So you've got to be really careful of that. So that is a possibility here. Maybe this sewer manhole here is the problem. If that sewer manhole is, let's have a look. That's Existing driveway crossover. Oh, well, that's a sticky one already. They want that manhole in the neighbour's driveway. That's going to be interesting. Now, technically, I believe you don't need the permission because it is on the footpath, but you are then getting involved in a neighbour's driveway. Maybe the relationship is already strained there. Maybe this neighbor doesn't want this to happen and they're causing all the trouble they possibly can. So what I'm saying is when people are selling stuff DA approved, go into it with a skeptical eye and ask yourself the question, why are they selling it? Because if it's a cracking deal, why sell it? Okay, so what we need to look at here is, okay, biggest cost in this development is the driveway, by far. Unless, of course, that sewer is one of those horrible ones. So driveway, we've got 3.5 meters wide at this point, and we've got 6 meters wide at this point. For the sake of making things easy, I'm just going to say it's an average of 4.5 meters in width. Now, most recent quotes I had for concrete driveways like this was about $250 per square meter. So you can figure that out, and that 4.5 meters times roughly 50 meters in length. Let's have a look. So 50 meters in length times 4.5 meters wide gives us 225 square meters times $250 equals $56,250 in driveway cost alone. So we need to factor that in. Okay, and then we've got our water. Water is relatively inexpensive. There's not a whole lot to it, and often you dig in the trenches around there anyway. It's not like they're bringing a machine specifically for that. So it's one of the cheaper things to install. And it's pressurized, so there's less involved. Whereas with sewer and with stormwater, you've got to get all the correct fall levels and all those sorts of things. There's more involved. And if it's particularly flat, you can end up with hugely oversized pipes to deal with the fact that there's not much fall. So water, I'm not too concerned about. Sewer, yep, we are installing a manhole and we are having to run the sewer main here. Look, I would guess at least 40, maybe 50 grand would be my guess off the top of my head. So we're already at 100 grand plus with the sewer and the driveway. We've then got our water. We've also got our electrical and comms. So let's start plugging some of this into a spreadsheet. Now, funnily enough, I already have one done because my my acquisitions manager was working on it. So we are using this template today. And the key thing to note here is, like I said, the one advantage that you do get is that it's DA approved. You've saved that time. So you've probably saved yourself, 4 months maybe in this sort of a size site. With this one, because there was a fair bit of play with the habitat and all that sort of stuff, probably saved more. There would have been a lot more reporting for the ecological side of things and the flooding. Can you vary a DA once it's approved from Roland? You can. You just got to go back to council. So yes, it's not unheard of to get a DA and go, you know what, we can do better, and go back and renegotiate it with council. If you can see something that's possible, sometimes what happens when the appetite in the market shifts, you might get people to go and get a DA for townhouses, but then townhouses fall out of failure and you go pick up a townhouse from a distressed developer, townhouse site from a distressed developer because they can't get rid of it and get it rejigged for subdivision as an example, or vice versa. So given the DA is already there, we don't need to allow for anything there. Operational works, if it's required, probably allow about 4 months to get it, a couple of months to get on site after that. So we're on six months after settlement, after contract date, we're on site. Plan sealing 5 months later. Construction, we're allowing 4 months for construction, which is pretty generous given that there's not a whole lot there. But you just always got to allow for rain and those sorts of things. You can lose a month or two with rain so quickly. And so basically we're saying it's roughly a 12-month get in and get out, which is nice. So that's quick, that's tidy. So we don't need to allow for any consultants prior to DA. We still need to allow for consultants post DA. I would say that's probably on the light side. So we normally allow like 7,000 to 8,000 per lot, but that sort of situation is typically designed for larger projects. For this sort of project here, I would say that's probably going to be significantly under. So I'll have a chat to him about why I put that in. He's probably just gone from habit of the bigger projects. In terms of services and earthworks, so as we figured out before, we're probably at 110,000 just from the driveway and the sewer. So he's allowed another 64,000 there for basically any earthworks that's required, the water, and I think landscaping. He's got 6 in the bottom, but that's bugger all. So, these are obviously preliminary numbers. Going to need more finessing, but that's what he's allowed so far. Electrical and comms, he's allowed 30,000 and 10% of construction for the contingency. These are just all your typical fees, as in, 2 lots of contributions. That's actually a little bit low now. It's more like 34, 35,000 per lot. Applications post DA, street landscaping, allocation for some general costs, land tax, water rates, et cetera. Purchase costs, we just estimate at 4.5%. It's a little bit heavy, but it's, again, if you're scraping over $1,000 here, $1,000 there, you're probably pushing your DA a bit hard. Now, I've allowed for financing 50% of the purchase. Now, why do you think I'm not going an 80% lend investor product? Why do you think? Let's have a look here. See if we can see anything on Street View. So that's the driveway, by the way, that it's saying we need to put a manhole in. Let's see if we can get a better look at that. Can't quite tell if it's bitumen or if it's just loose gravel. Either way, don't think the neighbor's going to love that idea. Okay, so this is our site over here. Pretty overgrown when this happened, so not sure we're going to get much out of that. So is it possibly a commercial lend? Is the house uninhabitable? Yeah, so Roland's on the money there. So I haven't been inside of it yet, but from what I've heard, yeah, I don't think these are going to be considered habitable, which means you're not going to get a typical investor product for it. You can roll the dice on it in that, like, if you're when your broker requests the valuation, if you're lucky enough that they get a desktop valuation, basically computer generated, then you might fly under the radar. The fact that this is DA approved already basically says you're not going to get a typical investor loan on this. So likelihood is the only product you get is a commercial lend, or private money lender, or maybe a second tier lender, maybe. But yeah, you are unlikely to get your typical 80% lend. So that's why I've allowed for different numbers there. I've also allowed a higher interest rate because of that, in the fact that your big four is probably not going to be that interested in it. For the construction side of it, then I have allowed for like someone like Westpac or someone that they'd be fine with the construction side of it. They're just not as big on land banking. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So these are the realizations that we've been recommended by one of our trusted agents from the area. So for the time being, that will do the trick. You can see here we allocate some to marketing, for commissions, for legals on sales, and our GST. So what I'm interested in here is it's saying that we need to buy it at about 850,000 for it to be a goer. So currently it's saying 27% because up here we've got 775. But for it to be a 20% ROI, it would have to be bought at about 850,000. Now, that is based on the numbers we've done so far. There is a lot of questions around this one. There's definitely a lot more to see out on site. So these are definitely preliminary numbers, but this suggests if we can pick it up mid-8s, it might be a deal. Now, they're wanting high 8s to 9s. So whether or not we get there or not, we'll see. The other thing to look at here as well, and this is a money rules question for you. So if you haven't done your money rules, you should do your money rules, as in what is the exact type of deal you're looking for? What are your minimum profit requirements? What are your minimum ROI requirements? What sort of debt you're comfortable with? All those sorts of things. Build some rules. Build the rules when there is no emotion involved, nothing at stake. Trying to make those decisions later on when there is something there to activate your greed gland, yeah, that can be a bit more dicey. So what I'm flagging here is the way I've structured this finance. You see, I've put no cost on the equity. I put no cost to getting investor funds. So it's basically indicating a joint venture. Because if I was to say that the equity had, say 12% interest associated with it, that's going to add 30, 40 odd grand of interest cost to it. Okay, now I need to buy it for 808,000 for it to be a 20% ROI. So, and profit obviously drops a little bit. So at this level here, that's either saying I'm putting in the cash. So here I need 400 grand in cash, and here I need, at construction, I'd still need 380,000 in cash. So just call it 400. Or I'm joint venturing it with a joint venture partner where they are putting in the 400,000. And then it's a question of, is there enough profit to go around? So 337,000 is the, although that's buying it at that price. So let's change that to, okay. So it's 263,000. So am I willing to do the deal if I'm splitting that 50-50? Well, in this scenario here, I'm not actually getting them to fund everything. I'd be getting the commercial debt. They'd be putting in some cash. So, am I giving them 50% of the profit for putting in some cash? Probably not. But let's just say that they're going to get a quarter of the return. Okay, so then we're 130. So they're going to get, let's call it 70,000. So let's have a look. First of all, is $70,000 an attractive return for them putting their money in for 12 months? So 70,000 into 400 is a 17.5% return on their cash. It's not bad. Look, depending what your investor appetite is like, they may be happy with that. Fixed rate returns tend to be more like 12, sometimes up to 15%. People that are looking for profit share tend to want high teens or into the 20s. So maybe it's not enough. If that was enough, what's that leave me with? That leaves me with about 180,000. Is that enough for me? So I can tell you with my money rules, that's not enough for me. So I won't do deals where there's only that amount of profit in them now. Why? With my skill set and with my appetite and the scale of things that I'm doing, it ends up being more of a distraction than it is worth to our business. And in terms of the allocation of resources that goes to me running a 1 into 3, or my team running a 1 into 3, same amount of resources as my team running a 1 into 10 or a 1 into 20, but obviously a lower dollar amount. So those are just rules that I've created internally for me and based on my business size. So that's a new element to start considering, is what are your money rules? Now, if you're looking for your first deal, you're not going to care about that so much. You should have a minimum profit expectation, but if the deal's showing 260,000 and you even need to give away 50% to get that person to put in that 400,000, then go for it. It would be my, not financial advice, but I think you'd be crazy not to lock down a profitable deal, even if on your first one it means giving away a bit more than you might necessarily like. You still walk away with 130,000 each, and you've got your first deal under your belt. You've got to starting to build a track record. That's a worthwhile exercise. What are your thoughts on that? Money rules. And if you have any money rules, pop it in the comments. Let me know. So ultimately where this lands is, it seems like if we can lock this down in a contract for mid-8s, that would be worth doing further due diligence. If they are hell-bent on it being high 8s to 9s, probably not. Probably just going to pass on it. So that's my thoughts on this one at the moment. So that one's currently in the works. Definitely a risk of putting this online at the moment, and I didn't even hide the address, so please respect that. But that gives you my thoughts on that one at the moment. Any questions? Given that we know comments are coming through very slowly, I will give you a minute for those questions to come through. But key takeaways is, if someone is selling DA approved, always be suspicious. I'm not saying that it's not a deal. I'm just saying be suspicious. And if you are buying sites, don't buy them assuming that just getting a DA on it and flicking it is going to be a good enough profit center for you to make the exercise worthwhile. On some occasions does work if the market is roaring, but going into a deal counting on the market roaring is a dangerous proposition. But If you get a good deal under contract and you go ahead with it, and the market just so happens to go nuts while you're going through that process, and you have the ability to exit earlier with a similar amount of profit to what you thought would take twice the time, that's a conversation worth having and entertaining that possibility. I'm not telling you that it's definitely that answer, but as an example, if I have 5 projects on and that's what's happening, I might choose to split the difference. I might go, you know what, we've got these 2 projects here, they're DA approved, people are offering me X amount of money for it, and that's a really healthy return, a very healthy internal rate of return on my money, as in what's the annualized return. I'm going to take that profit off the table and effectively de-risk my portfolio, but I'll keep pushing forward on these other 2 or 3. Yeah, that's quite a worthwhile conversation to have and something to consider. All right, so we haven't had any questions come through. I do realize that is a possibility of the delay in the comments, so I apologize for that if that is the case. But if you do write the comments on there, I will keep an eye out and write them on YouTube, which I think you all are on YouTube. And I will see them in my YouTube hub, and I will answer those later on if they haven't come through on here live. So I hope that was valuable, guys. And yep, put through any other questions, and I will see you next week. Mick, 20% ROI at this stage. Cool. All right. Don't go anywhere. Pose a question to you. So remember, ROI is a measure of risk. It does not account for time. So if a typical subdivision is an 18-month to 24-month deal, but you pick up one that is a 12-month deal because, for example, it's DA approved, like this example here, does the 20% ROI still apply to you? Now, this is a personal choice. I'm not giving you an answer here, because some would argue that it sort of now becomes more akin to a splitter. As in, it's in de-risk, it's a shorter project. So if you looked at the annual return on your money, the internal rate of return, there is an argument to suggest that you could accept a lower than 20% ROI because the deal is faster. So just throwing that in there to give you, I guess, something to think about. I'm not telling you that you should reduce that, particularly for your first project. But it's something to consider, because ultimately your wealth creation is more linked with your internal rate of return. So how much is your money getting returned on every year versus what are you getting out of each individual project? So maybe we'll do another session on that at another point, because understanding internal rate of return, not important when you're first getting into your first projects, trying to build that skill set. But in terms of your wealth creation, internal rate of return and understanding that, the velocity of your money, is a crucial thing to understand. Cool. Thanks, guys. See you soon.